Rachel Maddow's last piece on Donald Trump and herd immunity is something that you have to see. I cut it down quite a bit, but I think you should really enjoy what we have here. Check this out.
The president has brought into the White House has apparently convinced the president on herd immunity. And so this is now what we're going to do. And this has been written off, I think, as some of the president's usual, like, nonsense it's not worth paying too much attention to. But don't just watch what he says, watch what he's doing. And we can now pair these almost laughable, he can't remember the right words, can't spit it out words from him with what he's actually doing. And when it's not just what he's saying, it's what he's doing, we have to recognize this as a huge deal. Because what the president is letting us know is that what's going to happen in our country, with or without a vaccine, is that we will aim for herd immunity. Not just saying it, we now know he's doing it. And let's do the math on this, right? The idea behind this cockamamie theory, which is apparently our national policy now, this is why North Dakota isn't being told to mask up anymore. The idea behind this cockamamie theory is that in the absence of a vaccine, maybe enough people will get infected by this disease and survive it and become immune from it that their very existence will help slow down the spread of the virus in the future. That's how it will come to a halt. We don't know if getting infected with COVID actually prevents you from getting it in the future. I mean, look at the WHO's latest advice on this subject. Question, does the presence of antibodies against COVID-19 mean a person is immune and protected from being infected again? Answer, no one knows yet. If you don't like the WHO, ask the Mayo Clinic. Quote, it isn't yet clear if infection with the COVID-19 virus makes a person immune to future infection. So scientifically, we don't even know. If it turns out that you can get it once and then you can get it again, the whole premise of this goes out the window in terms of it having any beneficial effect to infect lots of people whatsoever. For the purposes of trying to figure out what the president is trying to do to us here, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume that the science goes his way on this. Let's assume that getting infected does make you immune. Let's let our next assumption be just as rosy. Per the Mayo Clinic again, quote, experts estimate that in the United States, 70% of the population would have to be infected with COVID-19 and recover from it to be able to halt the epidemic. Let's be super generous and rosy in our assumptions and say, A, definitely everybody who gets it is immune. And let's also say it's not 70%, it's only 65% of the country that needs to get infected in order to make this new White House plan work. And again, what's the plan?
We use the word herd, right? Once you get to a certain number, it's going to go away.
We like the fact that there's a lot of cases. That's exactly how we're going to get herd immunity, population immunity.
You'll develop herd, like a herd mentality.
Well, do the math. We're 330 million people in this country. Under this plan, they'd need 65% of 330 million people to be infected. They'd need 215 million Americans to be infected. Right now, we've got roughly 6.6 million people infected in this country and roughly 200,000 Americans dead, which means our fatality rate cumulatively in this country is just under 3%. It's 2.97% of all people who've been diagnosed with COVID-19 in this country have died with it. If that fatality rate stays the same and we go for herd immunity, then what he's aiming for is 215 million Americans infected, 2.97% of them dead. That is 6,385,500 Americans dead. Now, let's rosy up our assumptions a little bit. In terms of the fatality rate, right, this is a president who keeps lying about treatment, about hydroxychloroquine being a miracle cure. But again, let's be rosy. Let's say the therapeutics do come around, like they keep saying on Fox News and like the president says at the Republican convention. Let's say the U.S. cumulative death toll from people infected with COVID drops all the way to 1%. Even still, with this herd mentality, herd whatever, herd it'll go away plan, the president is planning, best case scenario, even if we triple our cumulative survival rate thus far, he's planning on killing off 1% of 215 million Americans who he wants to get infected, which means the White House plan, with all of the rosiest assumptions you can factor into it, is to kill off 2.15 million Americans, which is considerably more than 10 times the number of us who've died already. 2.15 million dead. That's the best case scenario. That's the plan. The 1918 flu killed 675,000 Americans. World War II killed roughly 400,000 Americans. World War I killed roughly 115,000 Americans. The Vietnam War killed nearly 60,000 Americans. The new plan, what they're actually doing now, not just talking about, but doing now, is to stop trying to contain the virus, to let it just run through us as a population, because the more people are infected, the better. And honestly, because trying to stop infections has proved to be too hard for this president. I mean, all the other civilized countries on earth can handle handle it. He doesn't want to try to contain it anymore, and so he is planning on letting it run through us while he doesn't do much of anything in terms of intervention. Open everything up. Open the schools. Don't bother with masks. Let's hold indoor rallies. Let's spread it all over. Let's just stop the testing, right? Demand the return of college football. Bring everything back full speed, transmission unabated, because he says it will stop on his own.
It would go away without the vaccine? Sure, over a period of time. Sure, with time. It goes many deaths. And you'll develop herd, like a herd mentality. It's going to be herd developed, and that's going to happen. That will all happen.
This is a real thing the president is bumbling through here. We now know, based on documents exposed by the Congress, we now know that this is not something he is just saying. This is something that he is doing and his administration is putting into effect. That is the herd immunity idea that Sweden tried for a while, which gave them the worst death toll in Northern Europe until they panicked and stopped. It's what the UK tried to do for a hot minute till they realized it was going to give them the worst per capita death toll in Western Europe. When the president started sidelining the actual epidemiologists and infectious disease doctors in the government because he instead wanted to go with a guy he saw on Fox News who likes the herd immunity idea, even though he's not even this kind of doctor. When the president dropped the real public health doctors and instead put this guy in charge, and then all of a sudden the U.S. government stopped recommending that people get tested. When we started cottoning to the fact that this wasn't some stupid viral Facebook meme that the president was repeating without being able to pronounce it, that this was actually the policy he's turning this country toward. Former colleagues of Scott Atlas at the medical school he used to be affiliated with tried to sound the alarm, warning that this guy, who appears to be running U.S. policy now, really doesn't know what he's talking about. And specifically on the herd immunity idea, he fundamentally doesn't know what he's saying, which is interesting in personnel terms. It's kind of hilarious about Dr. Scott Atlas and his career as a Fox News Channel contrarian radiologist. But this is also the plan that the U.S. government is following now. I thought the first time he burbled it out, it was some sort of kind of random emission.
Well, once you get to a certain number, we use the word herd, right? Once you get to a certain number, it's going to go away.
That was a couple of weeks ago from him. And that seemed crazy, and I thought maybe he was just random generating syllables. But now he's repeating it. And from what we've learned about how his administration has shut off its previous private recommendations to states to try to slow down the spread, now we know this is not just what he is saying and repeating, this is what he's going with.
It would go away without the vaccine? Sure, over a period of time. Sure, with time. It goes many deaths. And you'll develop herd, like a herd mentality. It's going to be herd developed, and that's going to happen. That will all happen.
It is one thing to have somebody in the job of president who doesn't know what he's talking about and doesn't know that herd mentality and herd immunity are two different things. It's preposterous. But he does mean herd immunity is what we're going for. And that does, if it works, it does aim for between 2.1 and 6.4 million Americans dead on purpose, because he'd rather do that than do what every other country in the world has done and implement policies to contain this. Policies to contain this thing, that's too hard for him. So he'll go with millions dead instead. 48 days till the election.
Donald Trump has been trying for herd immunity from the time he heard about it, because I think he understood two things. One, if he went for herd immunity, people will continue to die, yes. If he could keep that under wraps, cool. But the economy would not suffer as much as if we had to hold people back. Because if you could convince people that, first of all, COVID is the flu, and the flu is something you recover from, and yes, some people are going to die from it, but you somehow normalize people dying from it, it is then okay. Your economy continues to run even as people are getting sick, because yeah, it's 4 or 5 times the death rates of the flu. But, people can learn to accept a whole lot of things like they've learned to accept Donald Trump. But I think deeper. I think it's not that he planned it, but I think he already saw a way to monetize it. And if you looked at several of the other videos we did, you could see that Donald Trump has been consistently monetizing COVID. Opening up the country again revitalizes the economy, convincing people that only a few will die. I mean, the whole thing is macabre, but it is very Trumpian. And not only is it Trumpian, in his eyes, in his mind, it is okay. It's transactional, and we can make a buck off of it. So yes, he's willing to sacrifice 2+ million Americans to keep a sound economy, or to keep an economy flowing where he can monetize it for his people, and to hell with everything else. And the people that are its initial guinea pigs are his own. I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.